Hello shepherds, welcome back. It's just starting to feel like fall. And with that, first off to start the season are apples. I remember the first time I went to an apple U-Pick, there was fresh cider sold by the cup to the jug and several varieties of apples, plus slushies. In the deep south where I used to live, they didn't have cider donuts, but up in the northeast it's a fall mainstay. So in celebration of fall and the start of a cozy season, I thought it'd be fun to share the spirit of fall with a flock of sheepies. And what better way than with some homemade cider donuts. But first off, let's get some apples from the sheep's pen. Sheep are like the ultimate sharing animal. We get wool, milk, and more from them, and in return we share some of these crops with them. I'm definitely picking a couple apples, but also how can you resist giving them some apples? This is a mature wild apple tree. The apples tend to vary widely in size, shape, but they're pretty tasty though. They have a nice crisp texture and tart flavor, similar to a Granny Smith if you're familiar with that type. I remember when I first brought the older girls home, they were naturally skittish with the new surroundings and routine. It really didn't take them long to learn that when the tools come out, there's about a 50% chance the food will be involved. I think it's so cute how Lammy uses her lips. It's almost like she's kissing the apple. Each sheep has their very specific technique on how to tackle these apples. Is it just me or is it cute to you too? So now that we've been out here, we have a reasonable amount of apples to make some applesauce. This will form the basis for our cider donuts. If you want to use store-bought applesauce though, that works too. We're pretty relaxed here. I'm using a crock pot here, but my grandmother used to make them in the oven, and stovetop also works. I'll pop up the variety of uses over here. For the oven, bake until it's soft, and when using the stovetop or crockpot method, it's important to add water and make sure to watch the pot so it doesn't go dry. If you're using standard or big apples, it might be easier to peel them ahead of time, but after peeling one apple and looking at the pile of what I have left, I decided it'd be easier to just core it, seed it, and then just strain it later with a mesh colander. So this applesauce is unsweetened, but spiced. I've added some cinnamon, a dash of nutmeg, and a pinch of allspice. It's pretty much all to taste. Maybe a teaspoon of cinnamon, mostly because that's what I had left. Once the apples are able to be compressed and fork tender or mashable, we cool it down. I ran out of time here, so I went ahead and packaged it up in this mason jar so I can finish it the next day. So now that we have our main starter ready, let's get baking. Here I'm adapting King Arthur's recipe. We need about 1 cup plus 6 extra tablespoons of applesauce, 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla, but I really kind of just eyeball it, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Next up, 1/4 of a cup of sugar, 1/3 a cup of veggie oil. If you don't have a stand mixture, I would whisk the dry ingredients together first and then switch to a spoon. The batter does get pretty thick. If you are using store-bought eggs, the recipe uses 3 large eggs. I'm using a mix of eggs from my flock of light to heavy breeds, so I'm going to add in a few extra eggs. I do have a formula for converting the various eggs to any recipe. I'll pop up right here. You have my regards if you're using quail eggs. When I used to live in an apartment, I raised quails as a good city chicken variety alternative for the chicken farm hostile areas. But oh my god, the amount of eggs to make a singular cake. Wow, a lot of math. I love the farming mindset. So just because you live in a city doesn't mean you should suffer. I'm using a miniature donut pan. If you don't have one, a muffin tin will work really well. I've also used cake pot pans with these recipes. I just recommend adjusting the time for the size of your choice baking pan. I'm mixing the batter till smooth and grease my pan with a little bit of extra veggie oil. I'm brushing it in, trying to coat it well. Next up, we dollop the batter into each well. I'm so sorry you have to see this, it's so messy. I'm regretting not pulling out my piping bag and it looks so gross, but it'll be worth it. I'm overfilling a bit, but it'll be okay, as long as the bottom doesn't cover the center of the donut well too much, so that the pan will release the donut with ease. Now that we have our pan filled, let's bake it at 350 degrees for 15 to 18 minutes, or it's pretty much golden brown. Once done, I like to loosen the edges. Be careful, it's super hot. This will help the donut release easier. And after about 5 minutes, when it's still warm to the touch, pop these donuts out. I prepared a bowl of cinnamon sugar where I added some nutmeg and some maple sugar for that extra flavor pop. The mix is basically 50-50 cinnamon to sugar ratio. Another way to do this is to put it in a food safe bag and shake the donuts around. It sounds fun, but we're gonna make do with what we got. Now that we have our donuts nicely coated with our sugar cinnamon mix, let's go ahead and reserve some for a glaze. The glaze mix consists of 1.5 cups of confectioner's sugar, 3 tablespoons of maple syrup, a pinch of salt, and 2 teaspoons of milk or water. For the shape, I also switched out the maple syrup for molasses on the donut glaze. We stir it all together till it's nice and smooth, and it makes a really nice crunchy glaze once it dries. I'm just dipping and then twisting. These donuts are soft, sweet, but not too sweet, and aromatic. The batter ended up making about 2.5 trays of donuts, so it's quite a bit. Enough to share for everyone. My family was really happy I made some human-grade food for once. They're really sad when I made some heart-shaped cookies last time. I told them it was not for people and just for livestock. So on that note, let's go ahead and see what the sheep think. Lamie loves all food, so she doesn't hesitate at all. The lambs are just starting to wean from their mom, so I'm not sure if they'll like the treats at all. It seems like they like the sugar more than the donuts. Lily is not impressed. She's pretty particular about her treats, so I'm not surprised. She's a hard one to please. I love baking, and it seems like the sheep enjoy it too. I love watching them eat. What about you? Oh, and I almost forgot. One of the things that can be a kind of double-edged sword with sheep is that their milk doesn't pick up flavors from what they eat like goat's milk may. This is good if they're eating like a strong flavor, such as squash or onions, but it doesn't carry through sweet flavors like mint or herbs. This is specific to the sheep's milk products though. So if you're milking your girls and worry about how the treats may affect the flavor, it will, but more so in the mineral content and fats and such, which do affect the flavor overall, but not directly in, say, onion flavor carrying through. And you'll have onion chocolate milk or onion flavored ice cream. With that being said, thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to boop the like button, subscribe, and leave a donut emoji if you made it this far. Stay soft and woolly, my friends. Goodbye.